excited about this morning. This is a really special opportunity for us. We were really lucky to, my husband Boris and I were offered a private audience with Dr. Saamdu by Sophie Weldon, who runs Humankind Enterprises, and she has been on this stage at the start of the year when we did the Business of Benefit. So she's an incredible woman that has been to the Gross National Happiness Centre, and she's very involved in bringing the whole movement out here. So Sophie offered us this private audience, and we just knew it would be such an incredible opportunity. So we asked very politely if we could extend a group of 3 to a group of 53, so you're all in our private audience. So hopefully it'll feel really nice and intimate, and I want to give the opportunity at the end for people to ask questions as well, and I want it to feel like it's a bit of a family thing. We're all just having a great conversation, so please be involved in that. I also want to, of course, thank Dr. Saamdu for being out here. I just had a funny conversation with Felicity, who's with him, and I said, is it Dr. Chetri or Dr. Saamdu? And what's the answer? Saamdu. So I'm going to go with Dr. Saamdu. So, and also before I invite Dr. Saamdu to the stage, I want to play just a little video just to introduce the beautiful country of Bhutan and just a little bit of the movement, and you'll hear some of his colleagues talking. And then when I invite Dr. Saamdu to the stage, he's going to just do a 1-minute meditation. So if we can all be involved in that as well.
And also I would like to sing happiness song with all of them too.
Okay. Yes, please. As long as we catch this on film, this would be fantastic. So please enjoy.
The message that I'd like to share about gross national happiness is that it's not just about Bhutan, and that it's not just about happiness in a very superficial way. It's really about the deep-seated causes of happiness and well-being that come from living in harmony with nature, in harmony and balance with others around you, and really being in touch with yourself and your own wisdom. That transcends any culture or country boundary, and it's really central to our own personal happiness and to, I think, our survival as a planet.
GNH is a kind of a medicine, if you want, for the illness of our times. The first message of GNH, I believe, is reconnecting with our natural environment in such a way that we acknowledge, respect, and value the sacredness of all life forms and our interconnectedness with all life forms. The second crisis that we are facing as a mankind is an economic crisis, which is actually more of an ethical, of a moral crisis than an actual economic crisis. Therefore, we see rising inequality not only between North and South, but even within rich societies. So the second message is about creating a caring economy, an economy that is based on values like altruism and compassion and collaboration, solidarity, rather than competition and destruction of the environment. The third message of GNH, I believe, is reconnecting with ourselves, with our deepest or highest potential, with our deepest values. Because a lot of the dissatisfaction and meaninglessness that we experience in modern life is the direct consequence of this disconnection with ourselves.
I think one reason that gross national happiness has come into the spotlight in a global way right now is because there's a collective sense that things aren't working. I don't think we would be so interested in happiness if we weren't really feeling unhappy with a lot of things right now. So I think what GNH offers is not just a cosmetic stick-on Band-Aid solution to just tweak the system a little bit. It's really questioning, why have we been chasing GDP and economic growth at all costs? And can we not balance that and look at happiness and well-being of all life as a reason and the center for development?
Dr. Saamdu, I welcome you to the stage.
Thank you. I'm warned that I shouldn't walk with this wire
Yes,
out.
you're tethered, so be
Yes.
careful.
In Bhutan, we generally, when we are hosted, we offer a khadar. This is called khadar. Kha means important, dar is a scarf. So I would like to offer this scarf to you
Thank you. That's beautiful. Thank you.
with my gratitude.
Thank you so much.
And thank you so much for getting me here. How did the wire come? Oh, I should turn around like this. Great.
We're keeping you here.
Yes, thank you. Shall we do a short meditation of a minute?
Please.
Can we sit straight with our back straight, please? Legs grounded. Eyes closed, slightly open so that you can barely see in front of you, maybe a meter in front of you. The idea is that when we close our eyes and meditate, and if you're a good meditator, it just takes 2 minutes to go to sleep. So it's so important that we need to be aware when you are meditating. So you need to open your eyes slightly open that you barely can see a meter in front of you. Back straight, chin a little tucked towards your chest so that your head is straight. Mouth closed, your tongue touching the upper palate. Hands resting on your knees. There are many forms, of course, with open palm up. In the mornings, generally, we open our palms up so that we receive all the positive energy from the earth. Other times, you can also have your hands folded, actually left hand below your right hand, and then 2 thumbs touching together. That's what during the day when you're meditating, so that all your energy flows within you that you have collected during the day. And of course, when you are contemplating something or want an answer on something, then you actually put your hands on the knees, saying that earth is my witness. So whatever I think, I'll think positively, purely, and try to conclude on what is right from wrong. So these are a few things, and the whole idea of meditation is to call back ourselves, because we often are not connected with ourselves. Our mind is somewhere else, our thoughts are somewhere else, our body is here. So the whole idea is to be present. The true home for us is now and here, and therefore we need to call our minds back to ourselves. So let's do this exercise for a minute. Breathing in, I know my true home is here and now. Breathing out, this is a wonderful movement. I send my love, my compassion, my kindness to my family, friends, and all other sentient beings. So breathing in, I'm here and now at the present moment. Breathing out, this is the wonderful moment because I'm alive and I can send my love, compassion, kindness, my gratitude to all forms of life, including Mother Earth, the sun, the ocean, air, forest. Thank you.
I almost feel I shouldn't speak now. It's lovely stillness in the room. I think it's nice to connect. We're all kind of on the same channel, which is wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Saamdu.
An honor for me.
So I'd love to start with Bhutan and for you to share with us a bit about your homeland. So you're very much wedged between the two largest economies of China and India. Tell us about your country.
Bhutan is actually, like what you said, wedged between China in the north, India in the east, south and west. We are a country that stretches from east to west 300 kilometers, and north to south 150 kilometers. We are just about 750,000 people, a little more, close to 800,000 people. We start at an altitude of 125 meters and go all the way above 7,500 meters. So we live in one of the hotspots, biodiversity hotspots in the world, with all kinds of ecology you can think of, from tropical to alpine. And we are 72% forest covered, 80% green actually. And we have already demarcated 56% of our land cover for parks, sanctuaries and reserves. And we have created corridors for animals to move from south to north or north to south. Northern animals don't go south, but southern go up to the north mainly.
And we obviously are quite familiar with Nepal as well as a country. You're not connected, but you are almost similar. They're just a little bit further along. So what's the differences and what are the similarities with Nepal?
Well, Nepal, culturally, I think we're very close because they also have large number of Hindus and Buddhists. But they are much well-to-do in terms of economy. They are much larger in terms of land. And population-wise, like they are how many? About 5 times more than us, or even more. No, more. Yeah, it's more than 5 times, in fact. So they are huge, in other words, but we are divided by India and China. There's a valley called Chumi Valley in between. So we are quite separate from one another. They have larger plains than we have. Our plains stretch very small across Bhutan, 150 kilometers, but they have much more plains. And of course, they have the highest mountain on earth.
Yeah, everyone wants to climb. And so what's tourism like in Bhutan?
Tourism was kind of restricted, not because government want to restrict. We didn't have enough infrastructure to house tourists coming in. And we thought of creating tourism, but with very high value and low impact. So we raised the price of tourism to quite an extent. So we didn't want any backpackers to come because we saw how Nepal got destroyed.
Yes.
And we were very careful on it. But now we have enough infrastructure to house at least 200,000 tourists in a year. And we have now 130,000 coming every year.
Okay. And now we'll cover this more in detail. The core of Bhutan's gross domestic product is sort of how this whole movement came about. But what has Bhutan historically produced and how have you survived over the ages?
I think I really wish Bhutan continued that isolation because we were self-reliant, self-sufficient. Today we realize that the market in India is much cheaper than our own labor costs, so products are very cheap. So people tend not to work, but to buy. You know? So they want to do something else in the go for a job or some kind of earning jobs and forget about their land. So what we did was we realized suddenly that we were importing almost all vegetables after so-called development.
Yes.
And then we said no. We gave them 6 months time saying now you have to grow your own vegetables, and we really banned vegetable imports.
Wow.
Of course we couldn't completely do, but and then of course we have very strict law in the country, so all food that comes in is really checked properly, and like many vegetables from India are banned totally because they are chemically, they contain chemicals. We have been self-reliant in terms like every valley actually produce different kind of material, and they had their own food to eat. Like for example, the far west valley lived on wheat. The central west lived on rice. Then the middle lived on buckwheat.
Okay.
Yeah, and the east lived with maize or corns, and the southern part totally lived with rice again. So it was different kind of staple food that people eat in Bhutan, and therefore we are so small a country, but we have 19 languages, and one of the languages is only spoken in 2 households. I don't know, it'll die anyway. And I think when you start to bring national languages, try to enforce those languages, you tend to lose the rest of other cultures in any nation.
And we'll come to that. The idea of turning back to the land is a big part of the philosophy. I want to now put the spotlight on you a little bit, Dr. Saamdu, and your education. So now with the whole program, 100% of the children have free education. But what was it like for you in the 60s when you were going through school?
Well, in 60s we had very few schools. Many of the students were actually handpicked by the kings, by the people up in the governance system, who brought them to schools in India. So many of the present leaders up on the very high level are all educated in India. We didn't have many schools. There were very, very few schools there. And it was like everybody was handpicked from houses. A guy from the government would come and say, you have to send your son, your daughter to school. And they would, when they realize, the next house realizes that, they hide the children, say, we don't have children.
So they didn't hide you in time, right?
Yeah. Well, I was 9 years old when I finally went to school. My father kept on saying, you have to go to school, you have to go to school. And I said, no, I don't want to. I'm happy with animals, here with the forest, with the nature. I was born in a cowshed, so that was my home.
Yeah, like Jesus.
And when finally my father realized, he has to send me, so he forced me, but he sent a cow with me to the school, so that I don't miss the milk and the dairy products, And he realized in 2 weeks the cow got weak because people there only milked the cow and then didn't look after it well. So he took the cow back and started to visit me more often with milk.
Wow, it's a real packed lunch, isn't it? So this is really interesting. I think this is so impressive that you went on to earn a PhD and a master's degree in commerce, which I can say again, a PhD in commerce, it's incredible, and then a postgrad certificate in human resource management. So you did your postgraduate and your tertiary studies in India, but overseen by a Swiss school, and then those 2 countries continued to be quite instrumental in your working life. So you're working in both India and sort of through Europe. Tell us about that time. It's about 20 years in the sector.
Well, this was a Swiss organization called Swiss Development Agency. It's a part of the foreign arm of the foreign ministry of the Swiss government. And the relation between Switzerland and Bhutan is very old. Starts from 1958 on an individual level. King had a friend who actually helped Bhutan in to fight actually git diseases among yak. It's a disease that catches the yak and they go round and die, So that was the first help that Swiss gave us, and after that Swiss has been one of the main donors and partners in development for Bhutan, because they realized Bhutan had similar standing like Switzerland, the valleys and kind of living style. Maybe 150 years ago, Switzerland had similar thing like that. So they are very inspired to help us, and still today they are very present. So I used to work for a private sector. Actually, I was the first government graduate who was sent to work in the private sector. Government graduate means that I was schooled and graduated by the government. I had the right to pull on any chair in 1982 and sit on a chair at officer level, whether I knew the job or not, because I was a graduate, a big guy. But then I took that challenge to go to private sector and served 6 years, but I was trying to create working with Indian companies. I was trying to bring, in fact, entrepreneurship in the country, but it was like hitting your head against the rock, trying to break the rock, you know. So it was not possible for me, and I decided to go back to government. And then they asked me what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a teacher all my life, actually, a farmer or a teacher. But a long story, I won't enter there. So finally, my wife didn't want to shift to the place where I was appointed as head of a school. And then I had to find another job, and that's where I landed almost 20 years with the Swiss working.
And in a way, you are kind of Bhutan's export because you are taking these ideas out into the world. So I want to also talk someone that's very significant. You've mentioned the fourth Dragon King. So can you tell us the origin story of Gross National Happiness and how he was involved?
Thank you. Actually, our king, he became the fourth Dragon King. His Majesty King Jigme Singye Wangchuk is his name. He was just over 16 years when he had to become the king of Bhutan, because his father died very young. And during that time, he was studying in Cambridge in England, and he had visited some of the Nordic countries and also the European countries to bring a development paradigm to Bhutan, to bring a kind of development that would bring happiness for his people in the country. And he realized all development models that were working around those days was totally based on GDP, destroying the nature, the environment, and the society. And he said, for me and my small country, this is a wrong model altogether. So as young as he was, less than 17 years old, he had to become king, and he never saw his youth. But the first thing he did was to go down to the people at the grassroots and ask them, how can I make you happy? And of course the people said, oh king, whatever you bring us, give us, we'll always be happy. He said, no, you have to decide yourself. What will make you happy? Because I know ultimately we all want to be happy and well. So what is that I can build on and help you? And so without our realization, in 34 years of his rule, he had devolved power to the grassroots. And then he was like 51 plus when he said, now I'm old, I would like to retire and give the throne to my son, who is young, and I feel confident that he will look after you well, serve you well. And he will, Bhutan will become a democratic nation. He announced that, and then people said, oh king, no, don't leave us, please don't leave us. And he said, no, it's time now that you make a collective decision of your own future. One man, well, my ancestors have been serving well as servants to the people here, but it's not necessarily, it may not necessarily be true for my generations to come. They may not rule the same way that we've been doing. So it's time that you become democratic. And I think we actually were very kind of shaky a bit, and then we went into elections, and we thought everything was going to change, like India, like Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, like India government fell in 13 hours at one point of time. And so we were, and then how they fight in the parliament.
Yes.
Was horrible for us.
Yes.
That scene we could not stand. But we didn't realize that when we went into election, that was the only time that everybody was a bit euphoric and a bit anxious. But when elections happened, nothing changed. It was only the ministers that changed, parliamentarians changed, and there was a new post-prime minister.
So you have this Dragon King that he basically has eschewed the whole notion that we have in the world of gross domestic product, and he said, no, my people will be defined by gross national happiness. And he believed so much in that idea, he gave sovereignty to the people. Now you speak about retirement. You had come back to Bhutan around that time, 2005-06, from your illustrious career out in the world. And you wanted to retire, but you got pulled into politics and were quite a big part of the whole election. So was that something, how did you sort of get dragged into that?
Well, I was actually not a student built on career. I always, at every stage of my school, college life, I always went back home to be a farmer and my mother chased every time. So this time also, after 25 years of my work, I said, it's enough. I have saved a little bit, enough
For
to
children.
educate my children.
Yeah.
That's it. I go back to farm, help my rural community, serve them. And if I'm hungry, I just knock a door and get some food. That's it. What more do I need? So I resigned and went back home. But I had promised them, because they were so kind, that in addition to all my benefits, they also gave me 1 year's salary. And that was a big money for me. But on a condition that whenever they would invite me, that I should come back to help them. So that was a moment they called me, and I had several calls from the capital to come back and help institute a party, but I denied. But because of them, I came back and I was trapped. So I had to...
Obliged.
I was obliged to begin work with a party, and we instituted a party called Druk Phinsum Tsokpa. If we translate that into English, it's Bhutan's Blissfully Happy Party.
Sounds suspicious.
And, and they made me the campaigning manager at the end, although they asked me to be a parliamentarian. I said, I don't want to be in politics. And then we won 45 seats out of 47 seats, and we had to form the government. And so the Prime Minister never left me. He said, stay back and work. And it was a time in 2013 when the world started to say, but Buddhism, is GNH not based on Buddhism? And I wanted to prove, no, this is secular, this is based on human values for all cultures and for all religions. And then I invited leaders, cultural and religious leaders from all over the world, Islam, Hindus, Jains, there were Sufis, Buddhists, all walks of life came. We were 38 of them, and 10 of them came a week before. So I took them to the central part of Bhutan, where the center, you just saw the picture of the center, a few glimpses of the land. And then every day, beginning from morning till end, I would take them around and throw them every domain, And we all talked about it, and everybody said, wow, yes, it's true. It's universal. And I was so inspired, and we had one more day to leave, so I called a monastery as a change, to give that a mark.
Yes.
That GNH is universal. I wanted to become a monk. And of course they said, no, you cannot. You cannot become a monk. You can't wear monk's robes just like that. We have a good time in one month's time, because our head will be here and an event taking place, so that will be the right time for you to be interviewed. I said, either it's tomorrow or never. And that was it. And in the evening, the monk called me saying, okay, the Lopens have asked you to come tomorrow at 3 o'clock. But we don't promise you anything. You can come. So I went with 10 group of people, and we sat in a monastery. They were all given a seat. And then these two guys, they started drilling me with questions about, asking me about my background, about my children, about various things. And finally, I think they were very convinced that my intentions were pure and good. And they said, you deserve a dress. And they deroped me from my go, which you saw one of my colleagues wearing,
Yes.
and they put me on this dress. So I feel very nourished and happy about it. And then I found, yes, I didn't like to be in politics, and this was a way out for me.
Yes. Well, you've got the perfect now message and vehicle with the gross national happiness. You mentioned the domains, so I want to go back to the four pillars that undermine the whole philosophy, and then you talk through the domains. So please explain to us, what is the whole philosophy?
Well, basically, I think I should start with happiness definition. In the term GNH, happiness is not this fleeting, momentary, or subjective kind of happiness that we often associate ourselves with. It is more to do with serving others, living in harmony with nature, and realizing human values and wisdom. That's the definition of happiness under the term GNH. So what we do is we try to bring a holistic human development through these 9 domains, 33 indicators and 124 variables. The whole idea is, how can we give condition enough to people so they can pursue their own well-being and happiness? That's the whole idea of this philosophy. So we try to balance the material needs and the spiritual needs of an individual through these 9 domains. So we have 4 pillars. One is the equitable and sustainable socio-economic development. When you hear the word socio-economic, you well imagine that GDP is a part of it. So under it we have 3 domains: living standard, where GDP's economic growth is a main part, health and education. So 3 domains under this first pillar. The second pillar is preservation of environment. It has a domain by itself, which we have renamed as ecological diversity and resilience. Then we have cultural preservation and promotion. There we have 4 domains: time use, how you use your time. I can give you an example of an Indian time use. How do you live psychologically well? So psychological well-being. Community vitality, how do you live with your community? How do you share values with community? Then cultural diversity and resilience. Then good governance is a pillar and a domain by itself. So we have 4 pillars, 9 domains, and we say if an individual has 50 to 65% of the conditions in the 9 domains, he or she is narrowly happy. So which means she has basic needs to qualify herself or himself to be narrowly happy. I mean, to pursue that happiness and well-being. And if a person has conditions between 66 to 76% of the 9 domains, then we say you are extensively happy. You have more than enough conditions required to pursue your own well-being and happiness. And those having more than 77%, we say you are deeply happy. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So the idea of the government is to bring those who are unhappy to at least narrowly happy, and not really concentrate on the people on the top, but look at the people at the bottom level. So, if I go back into the history of development, what has happened is, like our king, when he realized, when the first measure gap between rich and poor was done with the Gini coefficient, we were 30.5%. That was the gap. They were alarmed, so they started to work hard with the grassroots, and until now, they've been doing that. So after 40 years we measured, and thank God, that was 3 years ago, we haven't changed. It's just increased by 0.1%. So you can imagine the hard work that our leaders have put at the grassroots to really pull up the grassroots, because rich you cannot pull down. Yeah. They will continue to grow rich. So the gap will expand. So not to allow the gap to expand, they started to bring these people up. So the whole idea is, how do you create happiness? We also measure the development of a nation through the lenses of societal happiness. If we see that society has grown little happy, then we say, yes, we have grown. It's not based on infrastructure or any kind of technology that comes into the country. In fact, Dragon King, 4th King said, I do not want money and technology to savage my kingdom and my people. We will definitely develop, but develop with these values. He reinforced this actually again after 10 years or for 15 years of his rule,
Yeah. What I think is incredible is that you've taken an esoteric principle like happiness and you've pinned it down to something very empirical, which is, the commerce degree comes out as well. So I just imagine if we as a nation were assessed kind of what we would see in Australia, and then I guess what the government would do, whereas in Bhutan you have a government that has looked at the state of play and deliberately tried to actually change it. So do you see, how can something that has worked so successfully, but in a way it's almost its little hermetically sealed country, how could that work in a country like Australia? Do you see any applications?
Thank you. Yes, very much. In fact, if you go to the World Happiness Report, you will see that Australia is in the 9th position, one of the 10 top happy countries in the world. But if you ask where Bhutan is, it's in 97th position of 158 countries. Wow. So we don't compare there, but then what they look in there is GDP.
How much money we have.
How much money you have. And of course social support, life expectancy and health, perception of corruption. Of course in Asia we are one of the best. If we exclude Singapore, we are very, very good there. Our perceptions are very good. And also, the generosity, social support, and dystopia. In other words, the conflicts in country. These are measured actually to see the happiness level of different countries. U.S. has jumped up from 23 to 21st position now. And I think there are reasons.
With Trump, surely.
And it will decrease now after Trump.
Okay.
Definitely, because I think also because the measure is not done through these indicators that I just told you. It is basically few of the indicators that are available are used, but more there's a vendor of Gallup poll in Australia, maybe few vendors, and he would ask their vendors, okay, Australia has so much population, maybe so many % of population, why don't you ask a question? They only ask one question. How satisfied are you with your life? Mark between 1 to 10.
Yeah.
And that is averaged, and you are told that your happiness level is, in the world where you rank, you're given that rank.
Yeah.
So it's not very accurate, I would say. And Bhutan, that way, of course, we're very poor in GDP. I mean, you can't imagine. Would you want to guess what is my salary in my country? And I earn one of the highest earners in the country.
Tell us.
Just about $800 per month.
Wow.
That's my earning.
Wow.
So, but with that, I can live a good life there. So, our GDP is very, very low. And of course, corruption, we are 26th in the world. And Australia does better, I suppose, than us.
Yeah.
Social support, well, we have better, maybe than Australia. We don't have old age homes in Bhutan. And we, in fact, encourage every Bhutanese to have at least 3 generations to live together. My mother is 104 years old. On the 4th June, and we are together, although we're not living in the same space, but we're together. So, the whole perception of happiness indexes actually is individual based. And when you look into the 33 indicators, it's divided efforts. So, 16 of the efforts are family and individual efforts. 6 of them are community efforts, and 11 of them are government efforts. So it's a joint effort of everybody to come to that bracket of happiness.
And that was part of my question. It's happiness is almost a individual thing, but also it can be a corporate thing. So obviously your paradigm allows for that, and I love in a way it simplifies. Dr. Kim was saying up there, it's about harmony with nature, harmony with others, and then harmony with yourself in a way. So for us as business operators, how can we bring those principles to our business? Because in a way, I think that's what's exciting about this room is that we aren't parts of big corporations. A lot of the people in this room run their own business, and they're part of something that they can control. So what advice would you give us as business operators?
Well, business operators actually are the rulers of the earth. Presently, the economic system, because if you go back in history before 1970s, you see ecology was encompassing the entire society. Within society was the economics. Economics was management of scarce resources to manage a family, and that concept blew out after 1950, after the Second World War, when Simon Kunjet gave this measure to measure the wealth of different nations, and he warned, saying don't use this for economic growth because it will not look into ecology and human society. But World Bank, IMF, they took it as a measure, and the whole world started on these principles. But for business, I mean, we can again have that encompassing ecology, within which is the society, and within society is the economy. I think we can go back if we can respect, if we can nurture our ecology, our nature, our environment, and the society. If you look into the interconnectedness with nature, actually we give nothing to the nature, nothing, but we are part of the nature. 2/3 of our body constitutes of water. 91% of our body is genes are from the frogs, frog genes. 91% of frog genes are in us. 90% of chimpanzee genes are in us. You can continue, 88% of dog genes are in us. 85% of cow genes are in us. 47% of yeast genes are in us. In continue, 71% of banana genes are in us.
Yes, I've heard this. Yeah.
8% of grape genes are in us. So you continue, quarter of rice genes are in us. So it is the elements, the nature, which makes us.
Yeah.
We don't make anything in the nature. But look at our ego, that we stand at the top and say, nature is there to serve us. We don't take ourselves as a part of it. Now, how can you play a role as business people to nurture this nature, nurture this society, and give happiness as a gift to the community of environment and people? How can you do? So I see many ways. We are now, two of these my colleagues are very involved in Thailand with Big Rim. It's a multi-billion company who is very involved in transport, power sector, heating, cooling systems, education, health. They're everywhere, in fact. So we trying to their ethics in business is to do business with compassion. So we found it was a very relevant thing to enter with them. So what we did was, first thing was to see how a company is standing in terms of indicators. And we immediately realized when you pass through these 22 indicators, screening tools to see your organization, you find what is wrong. How do you use your time in the company? Are employees very taxed? They have no time for their family. Time use comes in between. Time use is such an important domain here, because if you don't have enough time to socialize, to walk in the nature, to look after yourself, then you suffer. At the end, when you have retired, you realize that you're old, you are weak. Now, whatever you earned all your life, you're going to throw running behind a doctor or a medical store so that you can keep yourself well. So we don't need to wait that long. If we can divide our time properly and look at ourselves through different lenses, we can be much more healthier and better human beings. So we looked through this, and now what we began was training all the senior managers. In fact, all managers, over close to a few hundreds of them. We started with 250 mid-level managers. So we're starting with the senior managers. And then we'll go down. The whole idea is to make everybody understand, contemplate, reflect on life and living. And when you understand, then you change your perception, your way of working. You start to hug a cleaner. You start to be friends with everybody, because relationship is the one thing in happiness. If you don't have relationship, you are aloof. And you're outside that community and space. So how do you create that relationship? And so we started with that, and the next level that we will do first was to train self, transform self into becoming human beings with values and wisdom. The next step is to see how the clients are served. Is it for money? Are they served for money, to earn money, or are they served for the benefit of the clients? It has to be both ways. You also need to earn, you also need to see the benefits of the clients. Are they happy with the product? Are the product lasting? Am I becoming greedy and producing things that will not last long and the customer continues to buy? How can I serve the customer better and also serve myself better? So they are now shifting from coal powering system to now solar. They're promised by 2020 they would already be over 35% self-reliant for Bangkok through the grid of solar. So, and then the third level will be, of course, to really change the concept of how you recruit people, and then how do you create that culture of human resources evolving, all the time. So we are working that way, and I would say, as a business entrepreneurs, business leaders, the world is in your hands. If you want the world, generations to live better after us, It's in your hands. It's not the government. It's not the individual. Because we are actually helping the economy grow because we consume according to what the business tells us to consume.
Yeah.
We are sensitized the way that business wants to sell their products to us, and we find a niche kind of feeling in us that I need that product. I need to look handsome. I need to wear this design clothes. I need to apply that kind of medication or eat that kind of food so I'm healthy. And it might all be a hoax. Just, I met a doctor actually in Philippines when I was last year there. And she advertises for Coca-Cola actually. And I tell you the benefits of Coca-Cola. I'll just tell you what is the benefit of Coca-Cola. And I asked her, why do you do this? You are a doctor. You're killing everybody, ultimately.
Yeah.
And she said, I'm greedy, sorry for it. I'm really greedy. I realize my mistakes. It's a quick money. You just say what they want to. And a doctor is speaking, so everybody accepts,
Yeah.
And that's what is happening everywhere. And we need to really rethink our whole process.
Yeah.
If it is just this generation that we're living for, let's enjoy our life, do the way we want, destroy ourselves and die. But if we are living for our generations to come, then we need to change our entire perception of living.
Yeah.
And that starts, if we cannot change it has to be both ways. For example, we as consumers must realize that, is this cloth cotton, pure cotton or organic cotton, or is BT cotton, If it is BT cotton, I'm not going to wear. So you reject.
Yeah.
And you make the companies to rethink, packed food. Inorganic food, no.
Yeah.
I would go for more organic. Maybe I connect myself with the farmers to see how hard they work, and they sell at such a cheap price to the store, and store charges a fat profit and sells back to us. Why can't we communicate directly with the farmers?
And it's basically every decision that we're making, not just in business, but it's what we eat and what we wear, how we speak to other people is affecting this.
Direct implication and link with environment and the society. So we need to rethink actually, and then I think that can happen when you are able to live now and here in the present moment, being aware of everything that you do, asking questions. Okay, I want to start a business A. How does this business A impact families, clients, environment, the larger society, in the short term and in the long term.
Yeah.
So we need to rethink that, and then you can come with all products, same products that we enjoy, even maybe better products. We actually spent like 400 years of nature's work. We burn fossil fuels that's made by nature in 400 years, just in 1 year. And we're digging so much from earth.
Yeah.
And there are technologies which you don't need to dig. But look at the petroleum organizations that they have banned all other things. They buy it outright and hold it until the fuel is over and the earth is hauled. Billions of gallons is drawn every year. And imagine when you create vacuum on earth, what happens? Earth needs to fill that. So there is a movement.
Yes.
The natural disasters are human-made, induced. In fact, it's also proven by scientifically, that when there was economic recession, 2000 to 2011, when they looked into, there was less human interference because there was low economic progression. The disasters reduced more than half.
Yeah.
So directly, it's human-induced.
It's definitely really sobering, and I think that this is certainly a panacea to something that there's growing discontent in the world, and we're aware that what we're doing isn't working. And I just want to end on a quote before I throw open some questions. That you've said, Dr. Saamdu, that happiness is a skill that can be mastered by all. So I think that's definitely really encouraging. So does anyone have any questions that they'd like to direct? I've got plenty more.
Doctor, you touched on an Indian philosophy about time, use and time, that you were going to go back to. I was interested in that.
Okay. Actually, I also did another study. Recently, I was in Czech Republic, and they also have similar life expectancy when you combine the Eastern European bloc and Russia. they also come in the same average of 72 years of their life expectancy. So I was invited 2 years ago, yes, by the largest Muslim university called Aligarh Muslim University in India. It's close to Delhi. And so I did a little research to see how Indians spend their time. Then I found they spend 9 years of their life just sitting behind social, television, and now added with iPhone and computers, large part of their life there. They spend just about 1.5 years of their life raising children. 4 years of their life they're eating and drinking only. 6 years of their life they are only grooming and educating themselves. Another 6 years of their life they're busy with house chores, cleaning, washing oneself. And 10 years of their life they really, they don't think about themselves. They only think one thing: how can I step onto other and make more money, have bigger things, build houses, buy bigger cars. And when you add all this together, you are left with your life just between 5 to 9 years.
Wow.
And then you retire, you're old, so you're shaky now, I want to live longer, I want to see a better world, I want to raise my grandchildren, And then they're weak and they're sick because they have forgotten their life altogether. And they spend all the money that they have earned in 10 years now behind a doctor who just injects you chemicals until you die. So I ask this question: do you want to wait that long to realize that we have not lived our lives? No, we don't need to. Ultimately we're all going to die. That's the truth. And that's why I say happiness is a skill. We can self-develop that ourselves by being aware every moment, by living at the present moment, letting greed go away, excessive desires go away, no attachment to material things, living with the right human values and wisdom. Values and wisdom, they are a little different. I can also tell you about that. Maybe I just continue.
Yes,
Shall I?
sure.
Values, I say, I use a lot of abbreviations. So I say, values are those that you have foundation of love. And then you have 4 pillars I call rich, R-I-C-H, rich, very rich. R stands for relationship, I stands for integrity, your truthfulness. C stands for compassion, and H stands for humanity. And over it is a roof of trust. This is the value. This value is common with all cultures. If we can live with these values, we are happy always. Wisdom, what does wisdom really stand for? It is right thought and right understanding. If we have these things in our lives, we'll always be happy. So happiness is individual, it's inward, it's not outside. And we need to remind ourselves to call back our mind to ourselves now and then when our mind's going away. Past is dead and gone. You cannot change anything that happened in the past. No need to regret or be angry about it. Future is yet to come. I don't know whether we wake tomorrow or not, but today is the time we have. So we need to make the best use of today if we want the future to come to us. So apart from our day-to-day work, we also need to put a stone forward for that future. And by the time that future comes, your pile is big and you are there. So, so time use is very, very important that way.
Yeah, very.
Very important. Likewise, psychological well-being. All these 9 domains are very important for human holistic growth.
And I'll just take one more question. So whoever's arm is up first. Anyone? Nick.
Saamdu, you talked about the Gini coefficient and inequality in income. Is there, or do you measure inequality in happiness? And is it important, and how do you?
Actually, we do not measure happiness. We measure conditions to happiness, and so there you're right. There is a difference. Those who are not happy, those who are narrowly happy, those who are extensively happy, and those who are deeply happy. So there is a degree of difference in them, and the degree of difference largely is based on conditions like living standards and its education mainly. These are the main 2 factors that play a big difference. And time use is also quite poor in the rural life because of long days that they have to work in the fields. So this brings kind of a difference in the measure. We do not have similar to Gini coefficient records, but we consider based on these 9 domains the difference in this with percentage kept in between. This can also change because GNH is per se is not complete by itself. We are still growing. We're still, raising this idea. We're throwing this idea to the world. And by the way, this was developed by all experts in the world. We came together to do this work. It was not just Bhutan. So it is a gift of the world, and to Bhutan and from Bhutan to the world. So GDP is a part of GNH. We're not throwing it, but we're saying, what if we have to, destroy our society and nature for the growth? Then no. So we look development through the societal happiness. So we say without destruction of nature and society. So now between 2010 and 2015, the GDP would say 21% of growth in the country immediately. 10 years, no, 70% of the growth, GDP would put it on that index. But, sorry, it's 5 years, not 10 years. 5 years, 5 years into 7, 35%. 7% is the growth rate, 35% is grown. But in the GNH concept, it's only grown by 1.2% in these 5 years. So we look happiness through the societal eyes, yes, happiness.
Yes.
Could we very quickly fill in the audience, Dr. Saamdu, on what happened in Mullumbimby with Sophie and the letter of intent and with Byron Shire, so we know what's happening
definitely.
in Australia now?
So Sophie, who I mentioned at the start, has been very involved with Dr. Saamdu and was in Byron Bay just this week, was it? Please share with us what's happening in Australia.
Would you like to share?
You tell us.
No, I think it's better from you.
Come up, Felicity.
Hi, my name is Felicity Blake. I'm part of the GNH Australia working group, and I'm collaborating with Sophie Walden from Humankind Enterprises, who's one of the people that's brought Saamdu to Australia along with Small Giants and some other partners. And we had our reunion up in northern New South Wales this past week from the group that travelled to Bhutan and learned about GNH with Dr. Saamdu and his team. And we had a public event in Mullumbimby on Saturday night, after which Sophie and Dr. Saamdu signed a letter of intent to establish a presence for GNH in Australia, so there will be a GNH centre here working on localising these concepts.
Yay!
Amazing! And also we met with Simon Richardson, who's the Mayor of Byron Shire, and that local government area has consulted some experts, I guess, on GNH and how the processes can be internalised within council in local government decision making and community consultation. So it looks as if it's happening that Byron Shire will be the first local government area in Australia to start using these concepts in governance, in community, and we hope that it will be the first of many. So that's just happened this week, and please keep in touch with GNH Australia and get on board if you can.
Amazing.
Shall we sing a happiness song?
Yes, we've got the happiness song.
It's very simple, and I think you should sing yourself, and if you have children or would have children, sing for them. It's very simple. I'll sing once and then we all sing together. Happiness is here and now. I have dropped my worries. Nowhere to go, nothing to do, and I'm not in a hurry. The second stanza is, happiness is here and now. I have dropped my worries. Somewhere to go, something to do, but I'm not in a hurry. So let's all sing together. Happiness is here and now. I have dropped my worries. Nowhere to go, nothing to do, and I'm not in a hurry. Happiness is here and now. I have dropped my worries. Somewhere to go, something to do, but I'm not in a hurry.
Thank you. Well, on that very harmonious note, I'd love to thank you, Dr. Saamdu. I have a gift, but it's not. I can't present this with the same beautiful flourish as you did. But please accept
don't.
this from us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your time. I'm so encouraged, and for the office space, we want to basically implement these principles and share them with you as we go through the journey as well, to make sure that as a business we're implementing these principles. So I think if you stay in touch, of course, with the things that are doing on the good Gross National Happiness websites, and of course look at all the YouTubes and things, you'll be able to see Dr. Saamdu speaking. We could definitely hear him forever. But I want to again thank you so much, and thank you to everyone for coming, and please enjoy some more breakfast outside.